Hi, Vinnie. Thank you so much for inviting me today. My name is Kange Kaneene. I'm based in New York. I'm the Vice President of SAPIO Foundries, North America and Latin America. Very happy to be here. So SAPIO is SAP's external startup accelerator. So we essentially go in the market, find the most innovative companies, and bring them into SAP's ecosystem. We're a pretty new team. We started in 2017. We've already accelerated about 370 companies. We've
Wow.
facilitated, yes, we've facilitated introductions between startups and SAP customers over 3,000 times. But one thing that we're really, really proud of is we have a commitment to what we call no boundaries. That means we like to find founders who are women or people of color. So across the portfolio, that represents about 45% of the people that lead or found these companies fall into that demographic.
And
So
this is across the enterprise, right? I mean, they could be in
across,
supply chain, they can be in sustainability, it's the wide range of, okay.
yes, absolutely. Good question. So one of the main reasons that SAPO exists is because it's a way for us to try to add more value to SAP customers. And so, of course, I can explain that to you, but I wanted to take a minute to draw your attention to the bottom of the slide. And I know everyone can read, but I want to read it out loud because it's really important. This is a quote from Tony, who is the CIO of Bumblebee Foods, which is a company that you might know is probably most famous for selling tuna fish. So what he told me is, not only do I love getting exposure to new tech and innovations that can support our business, it's imperative to our success. SAPAO does the legwork to curate and filter the landscapes of startups so I know they complement our SAP landscape, and it helps us to de-risk the process if we choose to run a proof of concept. So this is an example of a CIO who has relied on SAPAO to be a pipeline for him in terms of ways to innovate more and extend his investment in SAP.
And from a startup perspective, it's so nice that you introduce them to customers, right? A lot of
Yes.
a lot of investors just put capital. This is almost better to be introduced to real life customers.
It's a good point. We feel that in some ways, like you said, is incremental to direct financial investment because selling into enterprise is not easy, understanding who the buyer is, and then the sales cycles are very long. So if SAP can help to accelerate that process, the startups get a lot of value from that. It's a good point. So when we think about who wins in this scenario, there's three winners. There's the startups, the customers, and SAP. So retail startups, so this is the fastest way to partner with SAP. I have to be honest, SAP is not an easy company to partner with for anyone, but definitely for a startup, it's even more challenging. And so this program is to help to speed up that process. So when we bring startups into our portfolio, into our cohorts, one of our main milestones is when they graduate, they have at least one integration into an SAP solution and then listed on SAP Store, which is like SAP's marketplace. That's important because
I don't know. I think you're being tough on SAP. SAP is not difficult to partner with. It's difficult. I find it difficult to navigate because you have so many products, so many industries. So having you as a guide must be just phenomenal for startups.
Right. It can be opaque in terms of knowing who to talk to for sure, but also there is technical reasons why it can be challenging for a startup, like the fees. So we do things like waive some of the fees, which, of course, as a startup, you have lean resources, both from a human resources perspective and financial resources. So that's one example of what we do. But you're right, it's mainly the navigation that makes it a little bit more challenging. So when a customer or when the startup's on the store, then we can go to our SAP customers and say, we have a vetted list of startups solving the problems that you're trying to solve, but also are integrated into SAP. And so that's valuable for them. For the startups, what they get out of it is, again, they access to SAP customers, but also because of the rev share for being on the store, then they can rely on some of SAP's sales team to support some of their go-to-market efforts. And then for SAP, what we get out of it is just we can say we have a very innovative ecosystem. So just to give a sense of the reach, we have 10 locations globally, 10 Foundry locations. Really excited to announce we're going to finally expand to Latin America.
If I, as a customer, wanted to navigate the 370 or so, is that easy to do? Is your store fairly intuitive? But sometimes the stores become so large that you get lost in them, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's two ways. If you're specifically interested in SAPIO portfolio companies, on SAPIO website, you have our portfolio listed and you can search on line of business, solution it's integrated into, size, etc. On the store, it's not, there's no filter on SAPIO, but you can search on things like the the business process that the solutions are tied to.
Or you can call it friendly SAP sales rep,
Ex-
right? They
Yeah,
can.
exactly. Or you can call me, you know, I'm happy to take the call. So like I said, 10 locations. We're expanding to Latin America this year, which is very exciting. There are two cohorts per year per location. And each cohort is thematic, meaning we change the types of startups we're looking for, meaning the problems the startups are trying to solve based on what's happening in the market and where SAP has identified maybe a gap in its portfolio or places where we can innovate more. Um,
Well,
we have we have 6 to 8 companies in each cohort, and we look for startups that already have a product market fit and have about 3 to 5 enterprise customers, which are just big customers like 1 billion annual revenue or more. So because of those two criteria, the funding stage is pretty broad. We have companies that go from seed to Series C, and that's just because it's possible to have a lot of fundraising and no customers and vice versa. And so that's why we have companies that fall in between that range.
this wants me to become like Benjamin Button. I want to go back in time and become a 20-year-old again,
Mm-hmm.
become part of your cohort next year.
Well, you don't have to be 20, you can be your age. We welcome all walks of life. So I will put your application at the head of the stack.
And I'd like to be in Shanghai.
There you go. Okay, you have very specific requirements, no problem. And actually, Shanghai is the most recent cohort, so it's really cool. So just quickly, I mentioned before that integrating into SAP is one of the main objectives for the startups when we invite them to the cohort. But I wanted to be clear that those integrations really do span across SAP's portfolio. On this slide, you see some examples of the solutions that the startups integrate into. So we make sure that they integrate into something that actually makes sense for them and the solution that they are providing to customers. And so I want to just contextualize this a bit more.
So if they wanted to, for example, work with your AIN, which is Asset Information Network, can they request? Is that the only list they can align with?
No, they have the ability to do anything within SAP's portfolio as long as it makes sense and as long as the data points are compatible. Usually, we bring in people from like solution management or solution architecture to help with that process to figure out specific use cases that make sense for the integration. So to contextualize this, as I mentioned, we have themes for each cohort. So we just graduated 2 cohorts in North America in January. One was focused on sustainability for consumer and retail, and the other sustainability for energy and natural resources. And then in the spring, we are now sourcing for a new theme, omnichannel customer engagement. If anybody is interested in applying, please let me know. Or if you have anybody to refer, please let me know. But what's something that's really cool is we are trying something new for the San Francisco cohort, which is called Rising Stars, which means we're going to bring back alumni portfolio companies that have already been through the cohort that we feel have had a lot of traction and that we can potentially lean in to have a more strategic partnership with. And the theme of that would be future of work. The reason I have TBD here is because we're still finalizing the cohort, but it will still be about 6 to 7 companies. And again, the main focus will be the business development, so helping them get more engagement with SAP customers.
Sounds like a MasterChef episode.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I watch a lot of Bravo, so that actually really resonates with me. That example that you just brought.
And you're going to have several from the top left present to me, right?
Yeah, exactly. So thank you for reminding me. So we're really excited that thanks to Vinnie, over the course of the next few days, you'll see some of these companies, both from both cohorts, are going to present on their solutions, but also more specifically how they add value to SAP customers based on the innovations that they're bringing. I also wanted to mention that part of the reason we're so excited about our portfolio, and specifically the ones you see on the screen, is we include customers in the sourcing process of who the startups are going to join the cohort. So we have a big funnel, usually about 700 companies. We bring it down to 6 or 8. And the last round of sourcing, when we're at about 10, is when we engage SAP customers and partners. So for example, for sustainable and consumer and retail, we included companies like Red Bull, Home Depot, Unilever, Levi, Energizer. So that just helps us confirm that we are in fact finding startups that are relevant to these types of brands, but also that then those customers are more likely to be engaged with these startups during the cohort, doing things like proof of concepts, pilots, innovation days, etc. So on this slide, I wanted to explain, for anybody watching that is a brand, how you can specifically engage with SAP.io. So one is we have the selection day, like I mentioned, we include customers in that process. If you're interested in omni-channel management, the date's already set, April 6th. Happy to include you in that day. It's really fun. The second is innovation sessions with anybody in our portfolio. As I mentioned, you can go to our website and see the portfolio and see if any of those startups would help you innovate further. They're happy to collaborate with you on doing that. We also offer mentorship opportunities. So that could be for personal interest if you just want to engage with a specific startup, or from a corporate interest. So for example, we've had corporate mentorships with startups where they have helped to guide the roadmap of the startup to say, hey, if you do this specific functionality, then me as Mr. and Mrs. Big Company will be more inclined to work with you. And finally, there's thought leadership opportunities like joint press releases, events, etc. That's all I have, Vinnie.
This is excellent, and I'll try to make time for at least a couple of hours on April 6th. That sounds neat.
Yes, great. Thank you so much.
No, this is it's pretty impressive. I didn't realize you had so many already vetted and so many already been through the process. So.
Yeah, we're really proud of the work, but all the credit goes to the startups. They're really doing some interesting things.
Well, as we say, everything with SAP, you've got to dig really deep and you'll find a gem. It's definitely a gem.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Thank you so much.
No, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. And I look forward to seeing your conversations with some of our portfolio. I'm sure you're going to be impressed. So